I wanted to ask you, my first question was really, what are your earliest memories of you in sports growing up?
My earliest memory of sports is watching the Dallas Cowboys versus the San Francisco 49ers with my mom and dad and brother. We had a divided household because my mom and my brother loved the Cowboys, and we're there in Texas, so that was kind of the home team. But because I was so competitive with my brother, we are twins, I had to find another team. And the 49ers weren't my team, the Eagles were, but my dad liked the 49ers. And so I remember, so I don't know which game it was, um, but I remember the 49ers playing the Cowboys, and my dad and I cheering against the Cowboys, and my mom and brother cheering for the Cowboys.
And you're an Eagles fan, is that right?
I am, yeah, and it was hell on days where
Of course
the
it
Eagles,
was.
they're in the NFC East, so on the days when the Cowboys and Eagles would play, on a couple of occasions, my brother and I actually got into a fight. We got into it, and I mean, those were terrible days to be in our house, yelling and throwing stuff, and this is when we were 11, 12, 13. Yeah.
The other memory that I heard, I have a source that tells me that growing up as well, you would watch Lucha Libre and you would get so excited about it. You guys would get in costumes and wrestle in the house, is that right?
Yeah, we grew up watching Lucha Libre and then wrestling. Um, it wasn't even the WWF or WWE back then. It was, like cheaper
Right.
Texas-based wrestling. Maybe it was a little bigger than Texas, but I remember the Von Erichs and Scott Casey and these different wrestlers, and we were all into it. This is when we were like, my brother Joaquin and I were like 8 or 9 years old.
So, Julian, you're also a very big boxing fan. What are
Yeah.
your memories of that sport? Who are your favorite boxers?
Probably my favorite boxer of all time was Julio Cesar Chavez.
Of course.
Even now, I watch old YouTube clips of Julio Cesar Chavez, but also Muhammad Ali. I was born in '74, and so I came up a little bit after his heyday. But Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, although I think that Marvin Hagler won that 1987 fight against Sugar Ray Leonard.
One of the greatest fights ever.
But I also, I've used this boxing analogy in this race that a lot of people think of the current president as some invincible. And I say that in sports, including in boxing, that people that are seen as invincible are often not defeated by people or teams that have exactly the same skill set. They're defeated by an individual or a team that is excellent in their own way, with their own skill set. And I think about the 1974 bout between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman, where everybody expected George Foreman to just overpower and bully Muhammad Ali. But Ali was smart enough to come up with that rope-a-dope strategy and use a different skill set to win that race. Win that fight. Here, we got to use a different skill set, and the different skill set is being positive, having a strong vision for the future, showing Americans the greatness of our country and what it can be.
Do you think that's where the competitive nature of what you do and who you are comes from? Part of it? Do you think the sports perspective comes from that side of you, Lucha Libre, being an Eagles fan? I read a lot that you and your brother obviously love each other, respect each other so much, but there is such a competitive nature there.
Well, the sports was a healthy outlet
Right.
for the competition between my brother and me. We were competitive in sports, we were competitive in grades in school, but playing tennis like we did, or watching football, or we used to play football. We had a decent-sized yard at one point where we played out on the street, football and basketball. That was one way to in a healthy way, to compete. Sure.
And how did tennis become such a big part as well? You turned down a scholarship to go to Trinity, is that right? And then
No, yeah, people have asked about that.
Yeah.
No, I got into Trinity, but I didn't have a tennis scholarship.
Okay.
I played in high school. And one day, my brother and I just went over to these tennis courts. When we were in middle school, we went over to these tennis courts at the place that would become our high school. And there was a gentleman there that was already in his late 70s that was teaching kids how to play tennis for free. And he had one of those lobster ball machines. And he lent us a couple of rackets, and then eventually we got our own, and we just picked it up. I look back now, and It's hard to stay out in the sun in San Antonio when it's 102 degrees right now for like 5 minutes. Back then, we were 12 years old. We would stay out in the sun playing tennis for 3 hours. I can't imagine. I was like 5 shades darker than I am right now.
It's funny. It's good that you talked to me about how you discovered tennis through a gentleman that helped you, coached you a little bit, maybe gave you the free equipment. How important do you think is it for a community, specifically an underprivileged community, to have access to sports and access to all these things that can help them, from an extracurricular activity, but also just to be out there and active, like you said, spending so many hours playing?
Well, sports are an important part of, I think, of learning, us developing as a human being. All of the things that people point out about teamwork, about building confidence, about building the ability to work toward a goal, and also in the kind of neighborhoods that I grew up in, to stay out of trouble a lot of times, right? So it's important for all kids to have access to sports and also to the arts and music.
Do you think that given the latest, news that we have from, the Department of Education and the taking away the budget when it comes to the Special Olympics, what do you feel about that when it comes specifically from what we're talking about? Because the Special Olympics are not just something so important to so many people, but they're an opportunity for these folks who have worked so hard to just try to be recognized.
The Special Olympics is a wonderful asset to our country and to the world. And it's a shame that folks would think about eliminating funding for that, because some of the most inspirational stories that we hear about come out of the Special Olympics. And also, sports is for everybody. People of different backgrounds, of different abilities, and the Special Olympics is a great example of that.
Julian Castro, as a Latino in Sports Illustrated, to just look at you to try and be the president of the United States as a Hispanic Latino in the United, to me, it's honestly not just humbling, but it makes me so proud, because when so many that look like us look at you, they can see to themselves, I can do that and I can be that, girl or boy, man or woman. It really, as a Latino in the United States, it really makes me feel so happy. So thank you so much for everything.
Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Julian.
Okay.